Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our online Zoom meeting. We've had a few of these so far, so really glad that everyone's joining in and we're getting good interaction. So we'll be starting our Pride and Passion panel this evening. So we'll just go on to the next slide. For those of you who may have not attended before, we do operate a code of conduct just to make sure that all of our attendees and all of our speakers feel really comfortable entering into our circles. A key thing as part of our confidentiality has changed with going virtual is that we wanted to communicate with you that we will be saving these sessions. So as Sarah mentioned earlier, we will be recording our Zooms. However, as it says on screen there, we will not be recording the Q&A session. So if you want to raise anything and remain anonymous in the chat function, we recommend that you can either remove the video and you can also amend your name on Zoom as well. So if you click on the ellipses over your picture, you'll have the option to rename just to really make sure that you do remain anonymous once this is published on our social channels, particularly on our YouTube. So what else we have included there is that we really want to make sure that this is also a really trusting space. We'll kind of lead on to that in our further points, but we do want to make sure that this is an environment where everyone does feel comfortable to share and that we do maintain that level of trust. So the next slide.
Virtually.
No problem. Okay, so another aspect of that is communication. So we do want you to pose any questions if you are curious about any specific topics that any of our speakers go over. You do have the option in the chat function on the right hand side to raise any questions. That's just to, if we have a number of people going unmuted, obviously it will be a lot of overlay there. So we just want to make sure that chat function is used, and we'll be monitoring that throughout the session as well. And we do also recommend that you share any personal stories that you feel suit the topic. You know, it'd be a great idea to discuss these. Our speakers may have had similar experiences, and we can just really try and connect much more in that way as well. So we'll just go on to the next slide. To our final circle fundamental, which is around commitment. So we do want to make sure that you are present in these sessions, as are we. And that if you build any connections or if any stories resonate with you, you can reach out to either the members of the circle or to our speakers. And you can also champion any personal professional stories that are shared. We'll just make sure everyone just goes on mute beforehand. And yeah, as we've said, we do have all of our social channels which will be shared throughout the presentation. So we're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. You'll find us Lean In Leeds anywhere. And yes, so I'm really happy to introduce our two Lean In Steering Group members who will be hosting the session. So we have both Sarah and Katie, and I'll just let them introduce themselves. Thank you.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Sarah. I've been involved with the Lean In Steering Group for only about 6 months now, so this is the first event that I'm co-hosting. My day job is I'm an actuary and I work in pensions, but I also have a side interest in diversity and inclusion, and I chair my firm's diversity and inclusion committee. Katie?
Thanks, Zoe and Sarah. Lovely to see so many faces, some new ones, and there's some names that are new, so that's great that we're reaching a new audience too. So, hi everybody. My name's Katie Glegon. I'm a diversity and inclusion specialist with Charlotte Sweeney Associates. I'm also part of the Lean In Steering Group, and I've been involved and helping coordinate these events for the last 3 years. So it's great that this topic, which is a particular interest of mine, is one that keeps coming up regularly, and we can give it the time and focus that it deserves. So Sarah, you okay to move the slides on? Thank you. So we've set this session up with an incredible panel of experts that are going to talk to you and take your questions and give some great answers and insights into what it involves creating an inclusive workplace in terms of LGBTQ+. But I'd like to just set a little bit of context before we get into views. It's important to remember that from an LGBT perspective, the language evolves and changes. It changes with society. It also depends on where you are in the world. So for the purpose of this event, we'll use the terminology LGBT, and that stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, but it also can mean questioning. And we also include the plus. The plus is included to ensure that we cater for audiences that don't necessarily identify with any of those labels, and also we also include that because that means that other people who are identifying and going through a process of figuring their own journey out, that's absolutely fine too. There may or may not be individuals on this event as hosts, panelists or attendees who are part of the LGBT community. That information is personal and it's entirely the choice of each individual whether that information is shared, when, how and with who. So it's important that we hold ourselves to account and make sure that when we have those conversations that we don't make any assumptions about anybody else in the room. So just bear that in mind when we're posing questions, that'd be great. Zoe's already mentioned around confidentiality. That's really important. We want to have that open dialogue with everybody, and we want to encourage everybody to pose questions throughout. It doesn't have to be when the Q&A starts. If you think of something, then by all means pose your question as we go along, and we'll endeavour to get to those questions. And also, as we said, with regards to recording, we're going to pause the recording to make sure that we can create that safe space for the Q&A. So the next point is thinking about respecting diversity. So by its very nature, diversity includes a whole range of perspectives, a whole range of opinions, thoughts and experiences. So as a result of that, not everything's going to align all the time, and not everybody's going to agree on every point, and we expect that, and that's great, and that's often where individuals can take opportunities to learn. Our ask for tonight's event is that we maintain respect throughout, and if there are points of conflict, that's okay, but we respect those views of other individuals and keep the conversation flowing. There are no stupid questions, so as I've encouraged you to do, then pose questions at any point throughout. If you're asking the
I don't have a contingency plan if this happens.
Is it me or Katie? Or is Katie on the internet?
Yeah, she's just put, I think, stopped. I think it might be her video. I'll try and carry on with what she was saying. So we just did want to stress that there aren't any stupid questions. We want to encourage anybody to ask anything that of our panelists. So if you're sort of worried about asking a question because you're not sure what terminology to use, or you're not quite sure whether you're going to offend somebody by asking a question, I think as long as your heart's in the right place and you're sort of coming from a place of goodwill, then you can ask whatever you want. Our panelists, obviously, they can choose to answer them in the way they choose. Casey, are you back? I think Casey's joined again, but I can't see her. Are you back? You're back.
This is the joys of technology, everybody. I'm not sure if you can see me. What I'm going to do is my internet connection. I can only apologise, it is an internet connection. So the joys of technology. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go off video because I think hopefully the audio works. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I just need to point on questions. So if you want to go on to the diagram.
Yeah, fabulous. Thank you. And thanks for bearing with me, guys. So with regards to jargon, what I'd encourage you to do is make sure that you call out the hosts and panelists if you feel that we're using any jargon throughout. We really want people to understand the terminology that we're using. So by all means, put that in the chat facility and we'll endeavour to cover that off. Thank you. So the next slide, like I said, I'm working a little bit blind here, but I'll do what I can, guys. Thank you for bearing with me. So Pride is celebrated in June, and it's really an opportunity to celebrate all things LGBTQ plus related. But what is that all about, and where does it stem from? For some of you in the audience on this event may be aware about the history, for others you may not. So just to let you know that during the 1960s, if you were gay in the US, that was classed as having a mental illness. Gay people were regularly threatened by police, and many were shunned by society. On the 28th of June in 1969, police raided a bar called the Stonewall Inn. This was a bar in the gay area of New York, and it was the second time in a single week that police had raided that particular venue. They threw out 200 people onto the streets and included some violence towards those individuals. The gay community were really angry about the way that they were treated, as you can understand, and they chose at that point to fight back. This event, the Stonewall Inn riots, began, and that was a week of protests and rioting from people from the gay community who were fed up of being harassed by the authorities. News of the riots spread around the world, and this inspired others to join the protests and fight for equality. It's important to, when we think about Pride, it's important to acknowledge that there are some great parties, some great parades, and it absolutely is about a celebration of the challenges that the LGBTQ plus community have overcome. But it's also really important not to lose the essence of the challenges that we still face. So there are some key messages that continue to need to be repeated, and equality needs to be and remain the target. Thanks, Sarah. So inclusion in the workplace, this is really kind of focusing and bringing the spotlight from LGBT about quite a common theme around our Lean In events about the workplace. This is some thoughts and ideas in terms of my experience, and I just wanted to share them with you as a first step and things to consider when you're trying to create an inclusive workplace in terms of LGBTQ+. The first point is zero tolerance. So zero tolerance means zero tolerance. That's working at creating an environment where inappropriate behaviour and words are not accepted, and people can expect to be called out when they get it wrong. I guess given everything that's going on in the world, there couldn't be a more topical principle right now. We're seeing that with regards to race. The principle still stands the same with regards to LGBT. The next point is educate. Educate yourself on LGBTQ matters and share your knowledge. It's a misconception that it's the responsibility of the LGBT community to educate others on LGBTQ plus matters, and that's not the case. Everybody has the capability to educate themselves and to share that knowledge with those around them. So I'd encourage you to think about the sources that you get your information from, how broad your horizons are in terms of where you, the Instagram feed, your Facebook feed, the books that you read, the publications that you read, and educate yourself through reliable sources. The third point is to think about creating a safe space. So where members of the LGBT community and their allies, we'll come to allies shortly in a little more detail, can have open dialogue where it's, so this could be an employee resource group or network, but I'd really encourage everybody in every organisation to either create that or to ask their organisations why that space doesn't exist and take measures to help create that. The next point is watch your language. So if I asked you to just pause for a moment and think about how often do you address the room by saying, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Mm-hmm. In those 4 words, who could you be excluding? Who could you switch off immediately from whatever you're going to talk about from that point in? Could you really easily switch that to hello everybody instead, which is much more inclusive, and it's a really simple switch? Or how often when discussing partners do we make the assumption, such as saying to a female colleague, what does your husband do for work? or to a male colleague, are you going on holiday with your wife? It's really easy to use neutral terms like partner and to make no assumptions regardless of who you're talking to and whether you know or whether you don't know whether they're a part of the LGBT community or not. Using neutral terms allows that individual to choose how and when to divulge further or what terminology they want to use and be consistent. And lastly, is thinking about don't be shy. We've done some extensive research at Charlotte Sweeney Associates into what holds leaders back from progressing work on diversity and inclusion. And consistently what comes out is that fear holds people back, particularly leaders. So fear of saying the wrong thing, fear of doing the wrong thing. But in my personal experience, I'd really encourage you to be brave with your conversations. It's not a bad place to start if you think about the individual that you're talking to and talking with, having good intent and always being respectful. And with those two principles, generally speaking, you can lead to a really good conversation. Thanks, Sarah. So I touched upon the word ally. So this may be a term that you're familiar with. It's all over the media at the moment in relation to the race spotlight that's been shone on the Black Lives Matters movement. So by definition, an ally is a typically straight and or cisgender person who supports, acts for and respects members of the LGBTQ plus community. Just to clarify, cisgender is someone who identifies with the same gender they were assigned at birth. So cis meaning the same in the way that trans means different. So a recent Stonewall survey revealed that more than a third of LGBT staff have hidden that they are LGBT at work for fear of discrimination. So why is it important to have allies? Allies provide an essential connection to the LGBT community. They're really powerful voices and they can have influence, often because they're the majority voices. So it provides a real opportunity to open up conversation on sexual orientation and gender identity. And specifically in the workplace, allies can be involved with and or run employee resource groups with a focus on the LGBT community. Every single person has the ability and the capability to be an ally, and how to take those first steps into being an ally is really to educate yourself. And now talking about pronouns, another topic which may or may not be something that you've discussed before, it may be something you're familiar with, it might not. That's absolutely fine. As an introduction to pronouns, it's useful to know that a large proportion of transgender people use pronouns that we're familiar with. So him, he, his, and she, her, and hers in English, for example. However, there's a number of individuals, including some non-binary people, who choose to use different pronouns. These could include, but it isn't limited to, they, them, and theirs. It can feel difficult to use different pronouns initially, but what I'd encourage you to understand is the impact that this change could have for the individual, and don't underestimate that impact. So respecting the individual's wishes and using the pronouns they choose is often a major step forward on their gender journey. And you being supportive in the way that you use the pronouns can have a massive lasting impact. So the plan was to share a video, but obviously with my internet connection, I think we're going to struggle with that. I suggest that we go into the Q&A. I'll try and tee up the video and we'll come back to it at the end. What I would encourage you to do is take the opportunity over the course of the Q&A session. You can hover over your name in the top right hand corner, you get the 3 dots and you can edit your name. I'd encourage you, if you want to edit your name to include your pronouns. It's entirely optional and you don't have to do it, but if you want to do it, then that'd be great. And if you feel comfortable doing so, then we'd love to see that. I'll hand over to Sarah and the Q&A panel now. You're in for an absolute treat. They're brilliant. Thanks for listening. If anybody's got any questions or wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'd love that. And I'll try and get the video ready and we'll share with you shortly. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Somebody, Lila, you just raised your hand. Do you want to say something? Go ahead if you do.
No,
Okay.
I'm looking for the chat thing. And
Okay, no worries. I was just trying to work out where I can change my name. I can't figure that out. So I'm going to stop the recording now. As mentioned, just forgot to do that.